Alrighty. Before we really start this video, I'd like to thank Just One Gamer for all the gameplay he provides of Danganronpa and Danganronpa V3. And just a note that this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy video. Now, some of you who've already beaten Danganronpa V3 are probably wondering, what do you mean the real mastermind? We know who the mastermind is. But I'm here to give off a different theory. But first, why don't we ask our survivors who they think the real mastermind is?
It's Kaede's younger twin sister!
Okay.
Besides the 16 of us at this school, there was a 17th person too!
Kinda like Lucro,
That 17th person is the mastermind!
I'm not sure if that's true.
It's possible that the mastermind merely faked their death.
Okay.
And has been alive this whole
That could
time.
fall. We never saw Kokichi's body.
It's Junko Enoshima!
Okay, it's definitely not Junko.
The mastermind of this killing game. And the culprit who killed Rantaro.
What do you think, Mr. Protagonist?
Here, Tsumugi.
Samugi?
There are no other possibilities.
Well, they're all wrong.
Master-
The people who've beaten Danganronpa V3, they think it is the canon answer that Tsumugi Shirogane is supposed to be the mastermind. But what if I told you Tsumugi is not the mastermind and that she's the second in command, just like Mukuro Ikusaba was second to Junko in the original Killing game or original Danganronpa game. And the same way Junko, AI Junko, was second in command to Izuru in the sequel. My theory is that Tsumugi Shirogane, whose literal name translates to silver, is not second to Monokuma, but rather second to the real, true mastermind of the V3 Killing game. Now, of course, I'm going to try my best not to spoil the answer too early, but I'm just going to start with a little tangent about a absurdly unusual chapter in terms of the patterns of the Killing game, that being Chapter 4, the murder, again, heavy spoilers, the murder of Muiruma in Chapter 4 of V3. The first point I'd like to make is that every Blackened and almost every victim except Rantaro has had their lab open up in the same chapter as their murder, right? In the first chapter, again, heavy spoilers, the Blackens of the first three murders and the victims of the second and third cases all have their labs open up in their respective chapters. Then we go and introduce ourselves to Chapter 4, where the labs that open up belong to Kibo, the robot, Tsumugi, the cosplayer, and Shuichi, the detective protagonist that took the role after Kaede's death. And it just makes you think, isn't it strange that Shuichi's lab would open up in the middle of the Killing game if he's supposed to be the main protagonist? Is it possible that Shuichi might actually die and that we might actually change protagonists a second time in the game? But before any of that can happen, Mew coerces everyone into a virtual world simulator, with Kokichi obviously pulling the strings and not making it very implicit that he's doing so. And then Mew ends up dead and everybody just freaks out. And then the killer is revealed to be Gonta. And the big issue is, what happened to the lab pattern? Wasn't there supposed to be like a script or something where Shuichi or Kibo or Tsumugi or, one of them dies by suicide perhaps, or two of them die in a murder? It's like, no. For the first time in the whole Killing game, in a random chapter out of nowhere, none of the lab openings have anything to do with the victim or the Blackened at all. Even Kokichi, the, alleged schemer of Mew's death, who helped Gonta, allegedly helped Gonta figure out all the logistics of how to get away with Mew's murder, not even his lab opens in Chapter 4. So, the question is, what happened? What was the break from the pattern? Is there a reason for it? To get to that, mind me for a little bit. I'm just going to turn on the fan to my room. To get to that, we need to understand what happened in the fourth chapter of Danganronpa V3. What led up to Mew's murder in the first place. So we go through the chapter, daily life, where before the murder, the pre-murder part of the chapter, and everything's going normally, except maybe Mew's a little overly erotic at points, and Himiko is trying to be super confident, trying to live up to the expectations of her dead, I guess, mentor / one-sided crush, who was, she was crushing on Himiko, and then died, and then Himiko became a lot more outgoing and extroverted and confident, and a little crude eventually. But not besides Himiko and Mew changing a little bit, not much happens until the motive is quickly revealed as a card key. And if you've played the first chapter, for those who've played the first chapter of Danganronpa V3, they know there's a very important significance with the card key. But what happens? Kokichi steals it, and then it never shows up again, and nobody knows what happened. There's no canon explanation for what happened other than a scene where Kokichi is in the game room in the basement beside the library with the hidden door with the little card key to open it. And Kokichi just talks about, I'm going to change the motive. I'm going to make things more interesting. And then Mew ends up dead, with Kokichi not doing a very good job of hiding the fact. Sorry, give me a minute. Anyways, there are people moving in my house. I apologize. The point I wanted to get to is that clearly Kokichi is onto something. He was the mastermind behind Mew's murder. Clearly, he has an active role to play in all this. The only flashback we get to Mew and Kokichi talking to each other after the fourth trial is when Kokichi introduces the electro bombs and the electro hammers, which you can see here on the screen. They look like regular hammers and regular bombs, but with, Mew's little spin on it. And what it does is it disables the exosouls that the Monokubs control, and the exosouls that keep Monokuma protected and keep the academy up and going for the killing game. And unfortunately, that completely contradicts Mew's alleged motives in the virtual world, where allegedly, according to the evidence, she was trying to kill Kokichi, and Kokichi got Gonta to kill her back. So the question is, why would Mew do something so stupid as to create the weapons needed to destroy the exosouls, and yet instead tries to commit a murder to escape? There's a very big, massive problem with that. Clearly, there's something about those two situations that we don't truly know about. And I'm just going to go outright and say it. I think Kokichi took the card. I think Kokichi figured out that Mew Iruma, if you have been hearing how much I've been talking about Mew and Kokichi so far, you may or may not be surprised to know that I think Mew Iruma was the true ringleader and mastermind of the killing game before Kokichi got his hands on her. And with the card key that obviously opens up the hidden room in the library that is revealed to be the mastermind's, temporary lair, while, maybe they enter it at night. It's not quite clear when the mastermind enters the room, but it's a very crucial room with all the camera, the AI, Mother Kuma thing. It's hard to say if you haven't played the game, but there's a AI motherboard and a bunch of connected cameras that connect to hidden cameras, like very, very tiny, moving, mobile, hidden cameras all over the school, and it all connects to the mastermind's lair. Kokichi gets the card key to that lair, but nobody really acknowledges that the card key does anything. And then Mew ends up dead. And the only thing I could think of is that Kokichi must have figured out from the motherboard, considering the motherboard is so open to revealing crucial truths, even when Shuichi and the gang get to the mastermind's lair, Mother Kuma just spills a lot of important truths. Even if the motherboard didn't explicitly say Mew was the mastermind, Kokichi could have asked the right questions to get the impression that Mew Iruma was the mastermind. Of course, I'm going to need a lot more to back it up, but I mean, there's another point where Miu's alleged attempt at murder against Kokichi doesn't work in terms of the weapon she plants. In the virtual world, she's gives herself a virtual world hammer. Obviously you're going to use that to whack someone to death. But in the real world, she, according to Shuichi's deductions, Miu allegedly placed a poison bottle under Kokichi's seat to distract the rest of the cast and to obfuscate the real cause of death, which is rather confusing because if she's going to kill someone in the virtual world with a virtual hammer and try to disguise it up with a poison bottle makes no sense whatsoever. Wouldn't she have a blunt force object under Kokichi's seat or beside Kokichi's seat instead? Or if in the virtual world she, tried to strangle Kokichi in the way that Gonta allegedly strangled Miu? No. She has a virtual world hammer and she has a poison bottle in the real world that don't add up at all. And my theory on that point is that all of this, creating the electro hammers and electro bombs before trying to commit a murder to escape and having a virtual hammer to kill, but using a poison bottle to disguise the cause of death, even though that obviously wouldn't work, I think is all connected to Kokichi. If Kokichi really did figure out Miu Iruma was the ringleader and used that as blackmail, as leverage to get her to do whatever he wants, he could get Miu to plant the seeds to make it look like Miu was trying to kill Kokichi and that Kokichi getting Gonta to kill Miu was justified. Now, as to whether Gonta killed Miu in the virtual world or if Kokichi killed Miu with a separate, completely different poison than the one he had under his seat, and then, the connection that Kokichi would poison Miu with one poison, put it back in Shuichi's lab, take a completely different poison, put it under his seat as a bluff so that they would think there's no way the poison could kill Miu because she's not showing the prominent symptoms of this particular poison bottle, so we can rule out poison altogether, like Shuichi does in his deductions. All this to say, I'm very highly sure that all this was Kokichi's idea to kill the real ringleader. And then once Miu's dead and the killing game keeps going, instead of realizing there must be an accomplice, what would be called the traitor, Mukuro-like traitor or accomplice to the ringleader, Kokichi doesn't really get to that. Even with all the files of the previous killing games, there's 50 files, some real, some fake, some fictional, some real, just dozens of killing game files in Shuichi's lab. Would be pretty difficult to catch up on the two masterminds thing if it's only in the first two killing games out of dozens of killing games, up in the 50s or 60s of different, book files of 50 or 60 different killing games. But I'm, going on a bit of a tangent. That Kokichi didn't realize that there was a second mastermind, a Mukuro to the Junko of the killing game. And so when he killed Miu and the killing game didn't end, his next suspicion is that Shuichi must be the mastermind. And it all makes sense in his head. He must have figured out that Kaede, big spoilers, Kaede didn't actually kill Rantaro, asking Mother Kuma from the mastermind's lair the proper and necessary questions to come to that conclusion. And reflecting on the first case, Kokichi would obviously suspect Shuichi. Not only was Shuichi the only person who knew about Kaede's plans, well, allegedly the only person who knew about Kaede's plans, because they were together the whole time. Also, sorry, give me a minute. It's not just that, it's that Shuichi knows every single mystery from the first case, which was wrong. The second case and the third case, he gets every mystery right, except for the one with Rantaro. He gets all these murder mysteries right for no explainable reason. All this together, of course, Kokichi suspects Shuichi must be the mastermind, and he goes through all these plans in not just Chapter 4, but Chapter 5 as well, creating an unsolvable murder mystery, intentionally splitting Kaito from Shuichi in Chapters 4 and 5, by pushing Shuichi towards the evidence rather than on Kaito's faith. All this to get the alleged mastermind away from the group leader and the person that the entire surviving cast trusts and who's closest to Shuichi and who legitimizes Shuichi's role as the lead detective, really. So basically, Kokichi thought, too long didn't read. Kokichi used the card key as the Chapter 4 motive to realize Mew was the ringleader and that Kaede didn't actually kill Rantaro. So he went on to this little scheme, whether it was him or Gonta, he got Mew killed. And then when killing Mew didn't end the killing game, he then suspected Shuichi. So for the, long story short, Mew Iruma is probably the real mastermind of the killing game, especially considering her outfit is the only outfit in the whole cast with rings, like playing on the original Japanese version of the title of Mastermind, the ringleader. Mew is the only character prominently wearing rings on her outfit, so much so she's wearing a collar on her neck that reflects the cables that are all over the doors and windows at the beginning of the killing game. The barbed wire all reflect Mew Iruma's neck. Sorry, somebody came into my room. I had to make a makeshift mini studio in the closet. But anyways, there's all my theories about who the real mastermind is. Of course, you don't have to take it seriously. It's not canon. The canon mastermind Tsumugi. You could take this with a grain of salt, but those are just my theories. I just hope everybody, takes from it what they will. And thank you for listening. And peace out.